welcome to the tier list for September 2023. This is the first tier list and the first month that the game's been out, and I've been taking ages on this video because I wanted to get it absolutely right for all of you. So I've played all these lists, and I'm confident that this is a very accurate tier list going into September. So tier 1, obviously we have Ruby Amethyst. I was so close to putting this in tier 0, but I opted not to. It's way too early to call a deck tier 0. Not all the decks have been discovered, but this is definitely the best deck we have at the moment. So the list I've got here is 67 cards. Basically, you can play 60 cards and have a fine deck for sure, but if you play 67, you can fit everything in. That includes the Broom package and all the cards to be aggro, which would be like the Rafikis, the Gastons, the one-drops, the Befuddles, the Jetsams, for example. And yeah, so the points here I've got is you could beat every single deck in the game, but the mirror match can be very technical. So against aggro, like I say, you have the Befuddle, the Jetsam, the one-drops, the Gastons, everything, and then against mid-range, you just kind of do control things and just play already broken cards, like be prepared. And then against control, you have Broom loops, which I'll talk more about in a second. And yeah, the mirror match just really comes down to not decking out and effectively using Broom loops. And the next point I've got is Broom loops are really important. Basically, if you don't know what a Broom loop is, it's the way that you sequence your Mickey Mouse Sorcerer and your Magic Brooms to enable you to do the same thing kind of every turn. So say you have 24 ink, I think is the count, and you have 2 magic mirrors and 2 pocket watches. You can play Mickey, you can play a Broom, you can give the Broom rush, but with the Broom you want to shuffle in an Elsa, and then you hit into something, play another Broom, pay for the second watch to give it rush, and then you can shuffle in one of your Brooms, for example, and then you can use the 2 magic mirrors to draw 2 cards, and then you basically guarantee that you can Elsa and Broom loop every single turn. So obviously at the start of that combo you'd play Elsa, then play Mickey and a Broom, give the Brooms rush, shuffle in another Elsa, shuffle in another Broom, and just keep that loop going. And yeah, that way you'll have complete control over your opponent and they won't be able to do anything. That's mainly in the mirror. And then obviously you have like against aggro, you have the Aladdin, which can steal the lore back and get those comebacks going. You've also got like early game tools. Overall, this deck can do almost everything, and it's kind of scary. The main reason it works is because you can just play so much card advantage. So you can play the Magic Mirrors and the Queens, and yeah, card advantage is the name of the game. You just want to have a really massive hand and just kind of whittle your opponent down and just slowly quest up to 20 until they can't do anything, or they've got no steam, or you just like out control them, for example. The difficulty of this deck comes from knowing what to ink in certain matchups, especially when you're playing a 67 card list. You've got all the stuff built in to defeat aggro, which means you can just ink it in the mirror match. So say you're playing the mirror match, turn 2, it's better to just ink a Gaston and play nothing than to just play a Gaston on the board. You still do want to generate some tempo though. Also, you need to know, like, if you've already inked one Broom and you need to do Broom loops later on, do you want to ink another one because you know you might not find it, all that kind of stuff. So just making sure you have those like counts in mind. Like, you're not going to play Jetsam in any matchup really other than like evasives. It can come up in the mirror match because, you know, evasives are a really big keyword, but you know, you need to know what to ink and when to ink basically, and that's why I think this deck has a very high skill cap, but it's definitely the best deck and definitely worth learning right now if you want to be a competitive player. So next I've got Amber Steel Songs. I've got this deck in tier 1 as well. This deck is crazy. This deck is definitely up there. Basically what you want to do is you want to just sing 5-cost songs and just play really strong draw engines. So points I've got is it dumpsters other aggro decks. So you've got all the steel tools that we know and love, like Grab Your Sword and all the Tinkerbells. You've also got the Lilos to race them, Simbas to protect the Lilos for when you race them. You've got Smash to get rid of all their stuff. And you can outpace control. So you've got Lilo to basically control kind of loses to aggro, and then you know mid-range kind of loses to like being outpaced or just outplayed. So against aggro you can like race it with Lilo. You have Simbas, Rapunzels to draw those cards, Rockstar Stitches on turn 4 shift, and yeah, like that. And then against control you can just outpace it, so you just want to end the game as quick as possible, but you also have so many tools to like keep going for a long time. You notice that even against control, even later on in the game, you can still generate these huge boards and huge hands, just because every card is just so good in this deck. And against control as well, we've got 2 beasts to destroy the magic mirrors. Just don't let them draw cards and you will definitely outpace them. And then the next one I've got is Value as King. So what that means is basically every card does a little bit extra. So you have the lanterns in there as well to make cards cost 1 less. These come into play insanely often, and they're so good once you kind of get like 2 of them. Especially when you get the Rockstar Stitch, you can just like draw cards for free basically. Another amazing example of value is Rapunzel. Healing a card and drawing free cards is like nuts. And then the star of the deck, in my opinion, is Ariel. So this card costs 2 free stat line, but it has Sing of 5, so you can sing songs like Grab Your Sword and Whole New World. And also when you play it, you look at top 4 and you find a song and add it to your hand. So it just ensures that you always kind of find what you need. And yeah, you threaten the turn 4 Shift Stitch, and then on turn 7 you can play the Surfer Stitch to draw more cards. So you're constantly just drawing cards and making these huge boards that your opponent just can't keep up with. And yeah, if you haven't tried this deck out, definitely go and try it out. This deck is crazy good. It just uses such good cards like Tinkerbell, Stitch. Every card is fantastic in this whole list. And you'll have a great time against aggro for sure, and you'll have a great time against control most of the time as well. Like I say, you just want to abuse 5 cost songs, so you can sing them. Playing a card that costs 5 for free is like crazy as well. So you just want to sing your good songs to either control the board or like draw more cards. And then you want to use your draw engines like Rockstar Stitch, Surfer Stitch, Rapunzel, Whole New World to just generate insane tempo. This deck is very hard to play though. I've got it as an insane skill cap. This deck is definitely one that will take you a while to get used to, but once you get used to it, I guarantee you'll be winning a lot of games against aggro and control and midrange, just everything. Once you learn it, it was a very good deck. So that was it for the tier 1 decks. Now we move on to tier 2. I've got Aggro Emerald. So I've only got an Emerald shell here. Basically, I'll just go for the first point. It can fit with almost any ink that you enjoy. So that's one of the benefits of this deck, is if you enjoy a certain ink, other than maybe Sapphire, then you can just slap this shell in it and you just play like a really strong aggro deck. So this kind of covers the evasives with Ruby, the kind of mid-range steel Emerald, and then we got like bounce with Amethyst Emerald with a lot of card draw as well. And yeah, oh, you've got Lemon and Lime, which I think people are calling it, which is Emerald Amber aggro, which you see like just in time sometimes in their list. But you see like the Lilo, the Simba, and then like turn 3 Cusco with a just in time, and it's like you can't race that ever. So like I think the high roll is like Lilo on turn 1, Simba on turn 2, and then a just in time Cusco turn 3, and then you just go from there. And sometimes you can even shift into Stitch on turn 4, and it gets crazy fast really quickly. So yeah, that's the benefit of this deck, is if you enjoy a certain ink and you just kind of want like a almost budget friendly way to play it, just slap Emerald Shell in it and just play it now as an aggro deck and you'll have a great time. Another point is that it outpaces everything. As you can see, all the cards here quest for an absurd amount for their cost. So you can quest for 2 with Flynn, discard all their cards, you can bounce stuff with Genie, you can quest for 3 with Hans, and you got a lot of bounce as well. So like turn 3 Mother Knows Best on a Tinkerbell that's about to shift the next turn is like going to buy you an insane amount of time. Bouncing one of their cards that they've just spent a whole time playing later on in the game is going to buy you an insane amount of time. You just have so much pace and you outpace everything. And the next point is that it's easy to play. Aggro tends to be a little bit easier to play than control, just because you have to make like less options and the games are over a lot quicker. So there's less turns to kind of think about stuff. So they do tend to be easy to play, but also if you're new to a card game, and I mean everyone's kind of new to Lorcana, right, 'cause it's just come out. This might be the deck for you, just to get the ropes going, get the thought processes going and learn the game a bit better before you dive into some of the more like technical decks like the control decks that we spoke about already. And also last point, this deck is very budget friendly. The Emerald aggro stuff, I think, other than like the John Silvers, which I think are even cheap for legendaries, quite cheap. I think the most expensive card is probably Cusco, but once the game fully releases, he's only a rare, he'll definitely drop down in price, and this will be the budget deck for sure. So next we've got another control deck. This is still Amethyst. So you kind of want to do the same thing as in Ruby Amethyst, with generate a lot of card advantage, and then just kind of like will your opponent down until they can't do anything. But this list kind of opts to beat Ruby Amethyst. So in theory, the game plan against Ruby Amethyst is that you use your beasts to destroy their magic mirrors, and then you use your removal like Smash and Tinkerbells and Grab Swords to kill their queens, and then just remove any form of card draw they have, and then just use card advantage to beat them that way. Just slowly whittle them out until they have no cards left in hand. You've got rid of everything, they're in top deck mode, and you have like 7 cards in hand, and you can just slowly quest away the game and react to anything that they play. You also kind of have the advantage of playing a control deck with Amethyst that doesn't just lose to aggro a lot of the time. Because you play Steel, you can remove all the aggro threats really quickly. So yeah, it just follows the main control game plan mostly. You can still do your like Mickey Broom loops as well, because you've still got all those same cards. And yeah, you just want to kind of play the control, and against Ruby Amethyst, you should have a favourable matchup just by destroying all their card draw and generating your own card draw in return, and that's just the power of the beast, hard-headed. Just, you know, destroying items is really, really powerful, especially since we are seeing how like dominant items are in the metagame at the moment. The only downside to this list is it's very difficult to pilot. I've tried, and I know other people have tried this against Ruby Amethyst just straight away, and not had much success, but the more you kind of like smash your head against the matchup, the more you'll kind of make sense of it, and the slower you'll see yourself learn the matchup. And yeah, overall I think this will be one of the better lists for people that are very, very good at the game, because they can maneuver all the different matchups in a very specific way. But for right now I've got it as tier 2, maybe we'll move up to tier 1, but just purely based on what I've played and what I've seen people play of it so far, I'm going to put it in tier 2 for now, but just keep in mind this one can be definitely very, very good. So next we have Amber Sapphire. This list is currently ranked 2, I think, on the Pixel Point ladder. Basically, you just want to create insane tempo and just go for really wide boards really, really quick. Again, we see the Rockstar Stitch, and we also combine it with a lot of card draw, like the Rapunzel I spoke about before, just using the Amber kind of draw tools, and then using the big Sapphire cards that allow you to ramp very quickly. And you'll see yourself create very wide boards a lot of the time, and just close the game out really quickly. You'll kind of assert dominance straight away, and then you won't like let up on that like aggro kind of play style until the game's done. And by the time they can react to your stuff with stuff on their board, you can just play Hades because you've already ramped to that certain amount. And you just play a lot of really good cards basically. You play a lot of removal with Hades and Let It Go. You can loop stuff with the smaller Amber Hades. So you can loop with Amber Hades, control the board with Sapphire Hades, draw cards with Stitches and the Rapunzels, and it's just overall really consistent. And you basically just want to utilize the different draw engines to string turns together to just make sure you're constantly drawing cards, creating this wider board that quests for a lot, and just asserting that board dominance. And it's a very straightforward mid-range plan of just making a board very strong and just not letting your opponent really have a chance to breathe. So next up in tier 2, I've got Turbo Belle Ramp. Now this deck is really good in the current meta. It kind of folds to aggro a lot of the time, but because you're playing Steel, you can kind of get away with the aggro matchup if you draw well and you know what you're mulliganing for. Because you can just go for the turn 4 Tinkerbell shift into grab your sword, and you should be fine from there, and then you just want to safely get to your bells, and then just quest for a large amount basically. The game plan is to ramp early, play Whole New World to refresh your hand, and then just spam big cards. So the main kind of combo with this deck is kind of playing Aurora and Belle on 9 ink, and then basically you want to give your Belle ward against like any cards that can like destroy it or bounce it. So against the Emerald they got Genie, which you can give a ward to protect your Belle, so she will definitely get that quest off. And then against Ruby they've got Dragonfire, which you can protect your Belle from. The only issue is setting up like a super wide board. If they play Be Prepared, then you're kind of stumped from there. I would say it's really good in the current meta because a lot of it's control at the moment. You have a lot of time to ramp up to your big stuff, and then you can kind of just hope that they haven't got like any answers. And then against aggro, you just have to survive until you can play like 2 Bells, and then you just win really, really quickly. As soon as you can kind of establish a Belle, you just win the game in like 2 or 3 turns from that point on. So moving on to tier 3, we've got Mill. The game plan of this deck is to spam a Whole New World by singing it, and you can prevent the opponent from questing with the Mickey Mouse Artful Rogue. So basically, the theory of this one is that it beats 60 card control, right? Because control goes very slowly and they draw a lot of cards. So if you can play a Whole New World like 4 or 5 times, they get very low on like cards in deck, so you can just kind of like win the game through that alternate win condition. Although now people have started to play 67 cards in their list, and suddenly Mill doesn't seem too good. But the basic game plan is just sing Whole New World loads of times, recur it with the Big N and Lady Tremaine, and then just keep doing it basically. And you establish a board, and every time you can sing it as well as play it with like ink. So you have these like really fun combo turns where you play Whole New World like 4 or 5 times, and the opponent can't really react. It's really, really difficult to play, and I'm not sure if that's because it's actually a very difficult deck to play or if it's just not that good. But it is a very fun deck to play. So if you're looking for something fun to beat people that aren't too like up to date with the control meta, then maybe give this one a go and see if you have any success with it. But it is a little bit inconsistent because you do play a lot of uninkable cards because all the mill cards are uninkable. But other than that, really fun deck to play, very difficult, but when you pull the combo off, it's crazy fun. So next up we got Tamatoa Items. The game plan of this one is to play Maurice, spam items, and draw cards, and then set up huge Tamatoas, and then they quest for like 5 or 6. And yeah, that's basically the game plan. It just, basically you want to just ramp into control with Sapphire. So you have the control tools of Maleficent, Hades, Be Prepared, you know, the Ruby cards that do a lot of controlling. And because you're playing basically all the items, you have just natural tech cards. So you have cards like Sword of Truth to banish villain characters, you have Poison Apple to banish princesses, and yeah, you just basically want to play just a boatload of items, quest with the Tamatoa one time, and then quest for another one again, and that's basically it. But you mainly want to play like a control game plan until you can get to those Tamatoas quite safely, and you also need to make sure that when you play Maurice, you can get some value out of it, so you don't want to drop it on turn 6 and then leave it for a turn. You want to play on like turn 8 where you can draw at least 2 cards off of it, and then yeah, you just basically want to play big Tamatoas, that's it. It does lose to spot removal, which the format is full of at the moment, so that's cards like Dragonfire, Let It Go and stuff like that. Tamatoa does have a big health pool, so like he does survive a lot, but he can't survive with Dragonfire, and that's kind of like the main concern, which is why this deck is in tier 3. So I think the last deck here in tier 3 is Ruby Ramp. Basically, the goal of this deck is to ramp into big bombs that overwhelm the opponent just because they have really large stats and they're just like really big monsters. You just play a lot of strong cards, they don't need any synergy, they all quest for a lot, they all do something when they're played, so you just want to drop like Hades or Maleficent to get rid of enemy cards, play Mickey that can just quest for 4 with Evasive, play Aurora to give you other stuff ward, you know, they all just do something really strong. But the only issue is that there's no card draw necessarily in the deck. You do have like 3 Robin Hoods, I guess, and Develop Your Brains, but they don't really like offer too much. And honestly, this deck is kind of outdated, and it's just kind of like a worse version of Control. You're doing what Control wants to do, just in a very like awkward way without card draw. So if you want to try this deck, then give it a go and let me know what you think. But other than that, that's been my tier list. This is kind of every deck that I kind of consider to be meta at the moment. If I haven't put a deck on here, for example, I didn't put Belle, Amethyst, I think that kind of just comes under like the Turbo Belle ramp and stuff like that. So if I did miss any decks, then you know they didn't really spring to mind. Maybe I've missed some. If you kind of are thinking of a deck, leave it in the comments and I'll let you know what I think about it. But other than that, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.